All right, so last week in our study on Revelation, we got started talking about symbols. And the question that I asked to start us off was, why was Revelation written using images to relay its message? Was it written in a secret code so that the enemy wouldn't know? And if not, if that's not the reason, which we said we don't think that's the reason, why was it written that way? So here's the slide that I had mentioned that we wanted to kind of talk about. Now, these don't exactly follow what I said last week because I kind of have my own thinking on that, but this was something from a class. It's just talking about, for some reason, readers of the Bible do not expect to find symbolic language in the scriptures and are unprepared to appreciate its special contribution to the revelation of God to the mind of man. So it says, what are the values of the symbols? One, this is from this author. Like I said, this doesn't exactly follow what I was saying, but abstract concepts must always be expressed in figurative or symbolic language. How else could man talk about his real feelings toward his world, his loved ones? Two, spiritual realities are the greatest abstract truths of all, and God himself is the greatest spiritual reality. How else could God reveal himself to man in terms which man could understand if he did not use symbolic and figurative language? Kind of talked a little bit about this whenever we talked about, like, is all symbolic language apocalyptic? And we said no. Jesus uses parables to convey spiritual truths to us. So same kind of concept here. You're dealing with things that we can't necessarily grasp or picture, so the language being used can help with that. I think we talked a little bit about, I said it differently, but memorable and impressive truths are better remembered and appreciated by the hearer when put into figure and symbol. Personifications of unseen powers and forces are best communicated in figurative forms, both for understanding and for protection from hostile readers or hearers. That's kind of somebody getting into the, well, does the enemy understand it or not? And like I said, I don't really think that was, I think if you get into the symbols, I think people understood what they meant. Like, I think it was it's pretty clear that it's talking about Rome in some of the passages in Revelation. So I don't think it was meant to hide the fact that it was talking about Rome or anything like that. And then number 5, to man imprisoned by time, space, and matter, God recognized in figurative language an effective way of communicating eternal realities to him. That kind of, I think, correlated with what I said about, the Revelation is written to address a specific time of persecution that was going to be happening, but at the same time, the way it's communicated, it applies to everyone from that point on, as far as anybody that was going to be undergoing persecution. So I think the way it's written allows it to do that, to offer encouragement to everyone who reads it and who can understand it. So that was kind of what we were talking about there. And then we started, after we talked about the use of symbols and why do it that way, we started in on colors. And colors can be used in the Bible to represent a trait or a train of thought. And we use the example, we do that today, right? If you say the colors like blue and pink, what do you think of? You think of, is a baby on the way going to be a boy or a girl, right? If you say green, you think maybe springtime or new life. Or if I say a person is green, what does that mean? They may be sick, or they're new at something, right? You've heard that somebody's green, they're not experienced with something. So yeah, it can be used as sick, or it can be used to talk about not being experienced in whatever it is that they're doing. So we use colors in the same way to represent things. The articles that I found, I mentioned that deal with the use of colors in the Bible, break colors into 2 different segments. There's the primary colors and the secondary colors. I don't know why they do that, because to me it doesn't matter. Like, I guess because there's, as we'll see when we look at this, there's some colors that, well, like the blue spectrum, like it might be sapphire or purple or blue, like that you got blue's the primary, and then, or actually blue's not even blue is the primary, never mind. Blue's the primary, and then the others are kind of under it. So I don't know about that. But the problem with talking about what do the colors represent is nowhere in the Bible are we told exactly what the colors represent. And they're used different ways at different times. So there's no way to just say this, but you can see kind of what I came up with based off of some research and looking at these articles and looking at the Bible for some ideas. And we'll just kind of go through this. And like I said, there's nothing where it's like, this is definitely what it means or anything like that. But the idea is to get you thinking or to say, what do you think about when you see these colors? What do they represent? Because colors are definitely used in Revelation to convey or to at least get you to think or imagine something, visualize something.
And try to keep in mind when you're using colors, as you've already stated, they're not absolutes.
Mm-hmm.
More than likely, it is to stimulate the mind of the hearer.
Right, exactly. Yeah, to visualize something, like to picture something. And like as an example, and I'm jumping ahead here to one of the things, but like fire. When you say fire in relation to you're going to go through fire or something like that, what does that bring to mind? Or refined like gold. That brings testing to mind, or going through a trial, or those kind of things. So yeah, but it doesn't always mean that. Like if you hear yellow or orange, it can mean something else. So yeah, it's definitely not one thing all the time, but just think about it. And some of these are just different ways that they're used. I will kind of go through the primary a little bit more as far as because they had more information on it. So like the first one there, red. In Hebrew, it's Aldum. I don't even know how you pronounce that. O-U-D-E-M, Aldum. And that means red clay, and it's the root word for mankind. So that's why you have mankind up there, or human beings. The symbolism of red extends its meaning to humanity for all humanity. In the Old Testament, blood sacrifices, right? The blood sacrifices of an animal meant atonement for sin. So you get relationship red to sin and blood. If you remember, the Israelites painted the blood of a lamb offering over their doorpost or on their doorpost so that the angel of death would pass over them in the final plague. So, all these things kind of can be brought to mind when you're talking about that. Atonement, salvation. If you look at Leviticus 17:11, it says, "For the life of the flesh is in the blood, and I have given it to you on the altar to make atonement for your souls, for it is the blood by reason of the life that makes atonement." So relation to salvation and life there. Blue is tekelet, T-E-K-E-L-E-T in Hebrew. It can also be translated sometimes, like I said, purple or violet. And it's the color assigned for priest clothing. So if we go to Exodus 28, 5 and 6, and we'll read quite a few passages related to the priest clothing and things like that here. But 28, 5 and 6, I'll have Dave and DP read some of them here, but I'll read this one right now. "And they shall take the gold and the blue and the purple and the scarlet material and the fine linen. They shall also make the ephod of gold and blue and purple and scarlet material and fine twisted linen, the work of skillful workmen." So, and like I said, there's a lot of instructions that God gives to the Israelites for what they were supposed to use for items of worship related to the priests and to sacrifices and those kind of things. We'll take a look at some of those. But it's also said to represent the heavens and the Word of God. During the Exodus, when the elders of Israel went up to Mount Sinai to worship, they saw God, not the face of God, but they saw God, and the description of the pavement under his feet is sapphire as clear as the sky itself, and that's in Exodus 24, 9, and 10. I'll read that real quick. Then Moses went up with Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and they saw the God of Israel, and under his feet there appeared to be pavement of sapphire as clear as the sky itself. So there's another place where it's used. The other primary color, yellow, is charuts, or charits, C-H-A-R-U-T-S in Hebrew, and that refers to the precious metal gold. Gold can represent the sovereignty of God. It can be, here again, Exodus 25, 10 through 13. And they shall construct an ark of acacia wood, 2.5 cubits long and 1.5 cubits wide. And you shall overlay it with pure gold inside and out. You shall overlay it, and you shall make a gold molding around it. And you shall cast 4 gold rings for it and fasten them on its 4 feet. And 2 rings shall be on one side and 2 rings on the other side of it. And then Deuteronomy 4:24. For the Lord your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God. So there, God is a consuming fire. So we know that gold played a significant role and represents the sovereignty of God. Solomon had the temple built and overlaid with gold. Gold was one of the gifts given to Jesus at his birth. And of course, as I already mentioned, yellow and orange can also bring fire to mind. And what's fire used for? Purification of metal, right? Other colors, white is generally used to signify righteousness and purity, right? You'll have your clothes washed white. It can also be used to convey conquest and victory. So what's white usually used as in Revelation, to represent in Revelation, if we see it? Both, right? You can see it as used in both, but a lot of times it's used as victory and conquest in that. Black is generally used to represent death, darkness, sin. Also, what does pale represent? Pale is I don't know if that's a color, but pale is used in Revelation. I think that's also usually relation to death or destruction, those kind of things. So the other things up there, you can just see some different, put that down, ways that things are used. Scarlet, sin, it can also be used as royalty. Sapphire, law, commandments, grace, Holy Spirit, divine revelation. Purple is royalty as well. And then, like I said, kind of sub things, yellow and gold, and then amber and orange, all dealing with God. Silver, the Word of God. Bronze, strength and durability. Green, we talked about new life, restoration. And then white and black. So anyway, that's all, like I said, nothing concrete there as far as what those are representing, but just kind of, as you see colors, they're to bring some kind of an image to mind or a thought to mind when used in Revelation. So, like to get your thoughts on that as you go through Revelation, what do you think about when you think about gold? We talked a lot about that. What about a sea of glass? What does that bring to mind? Ice? Or what about gemstones? Emeralds, sapphires?
The Emerald Sea, yeah, it's like water, yeah.
Okay. So anyway, just be thinking about that, what those things bring to mind. I'm not going to tell you what I think anyway, so, not right now anyway. But what do those things bring to mind? All right, so stones and metals. Also, we kind of just talked a little bit about that with like the sea of glass, or elements present on earth, weather, materials, stormy seas, etc. All of these things can be used to convey a message or to create a picture in our mind. Let's go to Daniel 2:31 through 42. If one of you guys wants to read that.
You saw, O king, and behold, a great image. The image, mighty and exceeding brightness, stood before you, and its appearance was frightening. The head of the image was fine gold, its chest and arms of silver, middle and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, and feet partially of iron and partly clay. As you look at the stone, it was cut out of no human hand, and it struck the image on its feet of iron and clay, and broke them into pieces. Then the iron and clay, bronze and silver and gold, all together were broken in pieces and became like shafts of the summer threshing floors. The wind carried them away, so not a trace of them could be found. But the stone that struck the image became a great mountain and filled the whole earth. 42. Then this dream, now we tell the king of its interpretation. You, O king, the king of kings, whom God of heaven has given a kingdom, the power and might of the glory. And those whose hands who was given, wherever they dwell, the children of man, the beasts of the field, and the birds of heaven, making you rule over them. You are the head of gold. Another kingdom inferior to you shall rise after you. Yet a third kingdom of bronze, which shall rule over the earth. And there shall be a fourth kingdom, strong as iron, because iron breaks into pieces and shatters all things. And like iron crushes, it shall break and crush all these. And as you saw feet in stone, partly of potter's clay and partly of iron, it shall be divided kingdom, with some firmness of iron shall be in it. And as you saw iron mixed with soft clay.
All right, so this passage is, of course, a vision in Daniel. We talked about that. And there's a metal or a material. Each section of the statue is made out of a material. The head is made of gold. And then, let's see, what does it go to next? Gold, then silver, then bronze, and then iron and clay. And each represents a kingdom, and it tells us what kingdoms it represents. The first one, Babylon. Second one, the Medo-Persia and Greece is the third one, and then Rome, of course. So there we see the use of these materials to represent nations. All right, so we see colors, metals, and other elements in the world can be used to represent something or convey a thought. Wanted to look at it a little bit more. I don't know how much I want to go into this, but I had a bunch of scriptures here that show how God instructs the construction of certain things for use in worship to Him by the Israelites. I guess they're pretty short passages overall. You guys ready for this? These big, small groups of scripture to read. You want to start with Exodus 25, 1 through 9?
Exodus 25, 1 through 9. The Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the people of Israel that they will take for me a contribution. From every man whose heart moves him, you shall receive the contribution for me. And this is the contribution that you shall receive from them: gold, silver, and bronze, blue and purple and scarlet yarns, and fine twined linen, goat's hair, tanned ram skins, goat skins, acacia wood, oil for the lamps, spices for anointing oil and for the fragrant incense, onyx stones for setting, and for the ephod and for the breastpiece, and let them make me a sanctuary that I may dwell in their midst. Exactly as I show you concerning the pattern of the tabernacle and all of its furniture, you shall make it."
All right, so the one thing I wanted to point out here, of course, you see the lists of materials that he's talking about, but he says, according to all that I am going to show you, and let them construct a sanctuary for me that I may dwell among them, according to all that I am going to show you as the pattern of the tabernacle and the pattern of all its furniture, just so you shall construct it. So God said, this is what it's going to be, precisely as I tell you. I want you to make these things. All right, then 23 through 25. Starting in 23 through 25.
You shall make the table of acacia wood. 2 cubits shall be its length, a cubit in its breadth, and a cubit and a half in its height. You shall overlay it with pure gold and make a molding of gold around it. You shall make a rim around it and the handbreadth wide, and a molding of gold around the rim. You shall make it 4 rings of gold, and fasten the rings to the 4 corners of its legs.
All right, that's good. Then drop down to 31 and 32.
You shall make a lampstand of pure gold. The lampstand shall be made of hammered work, its base, its stem, its cups, and its calyxes, and its flowers shall be of one piece with it. And there shall be 6 branches going out from its sides, 3 branches of the lampstand out of one side of it, and 3 branches of the lampstands out of the other side of it. And the 3 cups made of almond blossoms, each with a calyx and a flower, and 1 branch and 3 cups made like almond blossoms, each with a calyx and a flower, and on the other branch so for the 6 branches going out of the lampstand.
Okay, cool. All right, and I had a bunch of other passages. We're going to skip ahead and just do one more. Yeah, I think you guys kind of get the idea of what we're talking about here. Let's do 28, 1 through 6, and then we'll carry on from there. So Exodus 28, 1 through 6.
Then bring near to you, hang on one second here. There we go. To Aaron your brother and his sons with him, and among the people of Israel to serve as a priest. Aaron and Aaron's sons, Nadab, Abihu, Ezer, and Big I.
Ithamar.
Ithamar. And you shall make holy garments for Aaron your brother, glory in your beauty. You shall speak of the skillful whom I have filled with spirit and skill. They make Aaron's garments a consecrate him for my priesthood. These garments shall make a breast piece, an ephraim, a robe, a coat, a checker wood, a turban, and a sash. They shall make holy garments for Aaron, your brother, his sons, to serve me as priests. They shall serve gold, blue, and purple, and scarlet yarns of fine twined linen. And they shall make ephod of gold, blue, and purple, and scarlet yarns, and fine linen skillfully worked.
Okay, so anyway, like I said, there's a whole bunch of passages in there, and we can go through a bunch, but these things were laid out precisely as they were to be made. Different colors, different measurements, the materials and measurements used for the Ark of the Covenant, the table of showbread, golden lampstand, the altar, the materials used in the curtains and the measurements of the curtains, the priest's clothing, all of these things. Now then, was this symbolic? Did they actually make them with these measurements? They actually made them, right? But it's both, right? They were made with these measurements. They were made with these colors. They were made with this to represent something as well. And do I know what they all represented? No, I don't. I can't tell you. But I think they were meant to bring to mind things to the Israelites and to represent certain things. And as I said, like certain of them we could see, gold, blue. I think we kind of know what those things were meant to represent. So I think we can see that God meant for these things to represent something to the Israelites in their worship. All right, so as I just mentioned now, since we talked about all of these things, we talked about colors, metals, other elements. The big one in Revelation, or one of the big ones, because there's a lot of symbolic language in Revelation, is numbers. We just talked a little bit about the numbers, the measurements here. In most of the Bible, a number usually means what it says, literally. We talked about that, right? As I've already mentioned, when God says that he made the world in 6 days and rested on the 7th day, I don't think that's representative of big time frames. I think he means a day like we mean a day. Right, yeah, it's day and night, first day and night, second day. So we know it doesn't represent anything other than what it says as far as that goes. 6 days, rested on the 7th. Or the measurements of the ark or the tabernacle, the items of worship that God provided to Moses. These were actual measurements. Now, like I said, there may be some symbolic meaning to some of the measurements, but they're still actual measurements. They're real. What about it rained for 40 days and 40 nights? not representative. It rained for 40 days and 40 nights, right? Jesus fasted for 40 days. Once again, real numbers. But when dealing with apocalyptic language or prophecies, the rule is usually flipped. So when you see a number in an apocalyptic, what we call apocalyptic, as I said, that's just our terminology for it. But in these visions and images that we're seeing, when you see a number, the question should be, what does that number represent? Not, oh, it's whatever the number is. So as a general rule, they're not literal numbers of people, measurements, time periods, whatever it is that it's talking about. They symbolize a message, a concept, or an idea. Let's go to the Symbols tab, page 2, or document, page 2. And look at, the second page on that. So the Bible use of numbers. Here again, this is something that somebody came up with in one of the Bible classes at college. Back down. Page 2. Not first page, the second page. Yeah, right there. All right, so this person said there are 3 ways in which the Bible uses numbers: the conventional way, the rhetorical way, and the symbolic way. Conventional way, like what we were just talking about, number is what it is. Rhetorical, the speaker or writer in the Bible may say many, several, few, or multitudes. This number is not meant to be exact, but rather general reference for use in speaking or writing. We see a lot of times there were multitudes following Jesus, or those kind of things. Symbolic way, in the book of Revelation, the number 4 stands for the earth. 4 winds, 4 corners of the earth, etc. Number 10 is the complete human number. Number 7 is divine number. And then they reference a chart. Now, as you've already heard in some conversation and what Charles mentioned, there may be a little bit of disagreement as to exactly what number 7 means or number 10, but we know in general what we're talking about. So we'll put up a chart kind of talking about that, but we can kind of get the point of what's trying to be made from that. So we'll look at that. It also just talks about another use of numbers, especially by the Greeks, was allowing, just lost what I was saying. The use of, to represent a letter of the alphabet, the Bible does not make the use of numbers, make that the use of numbers unless it does so in Revelation 13:18. So this is the author talking about the 666. We'll talk about that more here in just a minute. In my judgment, this is the author speaking. This reference to the sea beast as 666 is making symbolic use of numbers. The verse is stressing that the number is the number of man. The second beast, probably the one enforcing pagan and emperor worship, wants everyone to worship the first beast, the Roman Empire or emperor. He wants the empire or emperor to be accepted as deity. The implication for, he's got that written wrong, for the Christian in John's day was, do not flinch, do not fear the first beast as deity. He is not God. He wants to be God, but he's only man. Do not worship him. So, which I think I basically agree with that translation of everything there too. But we'll get more into that when we get to those symbols. But anyway, using numbers to symbolize something is not a foreign concept to us. We rate things on a scale of 1 to 10 all the time, right? If you say someone's a 5, what does that mean? They're average, right? What if you say someone's a 10?
They're DP.
they're like DP. All right. They're what? It's a myth. If on a scale of 1 to 10 you say something's an 11, what does that mean?
Wow.
Yeah, it's off the scale, right? So anyway, we use the scale system to represent things, and we have other things that we use for numbers. So just like with other symbols that are used in Revelation, as I just said, there's not full agreement as to exactly what number is used to represent. Also, they're not always, just like colors, they're not always used exactly the same way. You kind of have to look at the context and what's going on with it. But I think we can get the general idea. So what are some important numbers to be familiar with in Revelation? 6, 7, 8, 10.
Or the number 666.
Yeah, 666, which is 6. That's a derivative of 6, right? What about 12? 12 is, I think, a big one. 3.5 is used quite a bit. So let's talk about some of those. Now we can go to the next slide here, or page. Next page. Yep, there we go. All right. So once again, this is somebody's opinion. This wasn't me that came up with this list. But 1, the idea of unity or independent existence. We didn't even mention 1. 1 can be used there. 2 represents strength. The passage. Now I'm forgetting where it's at. A cord of 2 strands is not quickly broken. Represents strength. When a man went out to fight an enemy, he would find strength and encouragement and companionship. Thus, the number 2 came to stand for strength, confirmation for double courage and energy. 3, divine, the Trinity, divine thought. 3.5 denotes incompleteness, despair, confusion. It's the salvation number. They call 7 the salvation number, divided by 2, so split in half. And it often appears in different forms: 3.5 times and a half a time, 42 months, 1260 days. So it has different forms, but it all represents the same thing. 4, we talked about the earth, 4 points of a compass. 5, I don't even know where they came up with the 5, but a perfect man was one who had all his members, fingers and toes. Doubled by 5 gives you 10 for completeness, I guess. So if you have all your digits. 6 represents defeat, falling short of the salvation number 7. It was within a stroke of destruction. So 6, 7 minus 1 gets you to 6. If 7 represents completeness or perfection, 6 imperfection, incompleteness, whatever you want to call it, destruction, despair. What's that? Charles has something to say, but he'll talk to me later probably. 7 represents salvation. The number 3, they say it comes up with that by the number for the earth plus salvation, so earth plus the Trinity. 10 denotes a round or complete number, and 12 represents a complete number of the saved, the Godhead times the cosmic number, is what they said there. But we're going to dive into these more here. So 7, on the screen, this number is said to represent salvation, and that is based on the number for the earth being 4 plus the number of the Godhead 3. It's the most prominent number in Revelation. Both Jim McGuigan and Steve Rook in their material said that they believe the message in this number represents completeness, perfection, and fullness. Steve also said that the number 7 describes a totality of a thing, like in total. So the 7 horns on the Lamb symbolize the fullness of Christ's power. The 7 seals, trumpets, and bowls symbolize the fullness and completeness of God's wrath and judgment as it relates to Rome. We've already talked about the book being addressed to the 7 churches of Asia, whether that's representative of the church as a whole or not. Also, we see 7 lampstands that surround Jesus in chapter 1. So 7 is a good number. The number 12, the message of this number is security. 12 multiplied by itself means ultimate security, just like 70 times 7 means ultimate perfection or fullness. Can you think of some places in Revelation where 12 is used? Or a derivative of 12? 12. Well, yeah, the 12. Well, there's actually 24 elders, but divided by 2, 12, which represents the tribes and the apostles, right? What about all the stuff around the new city, the New Jerusalem, right? It has 12 gates, 12 foundation stones. The measurement of the city is 12,000 furlongs, 12 times 1,000. Its walls are 144 cubits thick. So these dimensions symbolize the security and protection of God's people, his church. What about the 144,000? You guys have heard of the 144,000, right? What's that number? It's not a literal number of people, as some groups teach, right? Some groups teach that there's 144,000. The 144,000 is actually representative of the security of God's people, not a literal number. 144,000 they are sealed in contrast to the wrath of God that's being poured out on the beast and those that worship him. So once again, security. You mentioned the 12, but 24 elders, 12 tribes and the 12 apostles. And if you use the meaning of the complete number of the saved as shown on the board and multiply it by 2, which represents strength and confirmation, that gets you to the 24 as well. So you can see kind of a little bit of a play there with 12 and 2 coming into play. The 12 tribes could represent the Old Testament, while the apostles could represent the New Testament. Once again, 2. We'll talk more about that as well, and that confirms God's message and also could be representative of God's people. So once again, just as you're looking at these numbers, think about, well, that's what they're saying. What's it mean? What's the message being relayed? We said 10, and actually 1,000 is a derivative there. 10 and 1,000, 10 times 100. The number 10 denotes completion and fullness. The authors that I read said that it's similar to 7, but it's not as special and sacred.
7 is perfection as opposed to
Completion, right? Yeah. So the differentiation, perfection versus completion, might be a differentiation there. So 10 is complete, but not perfect per se. And there are 2 major uses of the number 1,000 in Revelation 20, and I wanted to read that. Revelation 20, 1 through 6, if one of you guys wants to read that. We're not going to quite get through all the numbers here, but we're working on it. We'll finish it up next week as far as that part.
The 1,000 years. Then I saw an angel coming down from heaven, holding in his hand the key to the bottomless pit and a great chain. And he seized the dragon, that ancient serpent, who is the devil and Satan, and bound him for 1,000 years, and threw him into the pit, and shut it and sealed it over him, so that he might not deceive the nations any longer, until the 1,000 years were ended. After that, he must be released for a little while. Then I saw thrones, and seated on them were those whom the authority to judge was committed. Also I saw the souls of those who had been beheaded for the testimony of Jesus and for the word of God, and for those who had not worshipped the beast or its image, and had not received its mark on their foreheads or their hands. And they came to life and reigned with Christ for 1,000 years.
Okay, so a lot of you are probably familiar with this passage. It's used in many different ways. But in verses 1 through 3, the devil's defeat lasts 1,000 years. So is the message that the devil will just be defeated for 1,000 years?
It's 10 times 10 times 10.
Right, so remember what we said. So the number is 1,000. What does it represent? It's not a period of time. What does it represent? It's completely. The devil is going to be defeated completely. But why? But then the question comes, why is it going to be released? And so we'll talk about that a little bit here. And I did a bad job looking at the clock. We're going to run out of time here. But so I'll finish by just kind of answering that question a little bit more here. Is the message that the devil will only be defeated for 1,000 years? I don't think so. I think Charles just said, it's a message. It's not a time period. But once again, Steve Rook felt that the message is the kind of defeat that the devil is to suffer, total and complete. With the overthrow of political and religious Rome that was persecuting the church, the devil's use of the power of Rome will be totally defeated. Do we know that that happened? Yes. So to me, it doesn't make any sense for this passage to be discussing a literal 1,000 years of imprisonment for the devil. Why would God lock up the devil for 1,000 years and then release him for a while? Like, that doesn't make sense. I think it's more in relation to, how it's going to happen. What's going to happen? It's, and what do we know happened with Rome? There were times of great persecution, and then there were times when it was fine, right, for the Christians. So there was going to be some periods where Christians were going to undergo great persecution, then times where they weren't going to undergo. But at the end, eventually, Rome was done. There was not going to be any more persecution coming out of Rome. All right, so we're out of time. We'll pick up there talking about 1,000, and then we'll get into 3.5 and 6. Those were the last ones that I wanted to really kind of hit home on and do more emphasis of what those things represent. So thanks for your comments.